Hey there, guys. Welcome to the Zeke Said So YouTube channel. Uh, it's me, Zeke the Geek. I'm back with a brand new video. You guys obviously saw my Lilo and Stitch out of the theater reaction. We are going to talk more about Lilo and Stitch on the podcast. Michael and I were supposed to record the show today, but Michael was unavailable to do that tonight, so we're gonna do that. We're gonna record the show tomorrow, but that episode will go up next Saturday, Saturday, May 31st. So make sure you tune in for that. Make sure you tune in for that. I'll probably have my review for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning on that show too, since I'm gonna go see that tomorrow morning. But I wanted to do, but this video is not about either of those things. This video is actually about The Last of Us because the season 2 finale was tonight. Um, and I wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to talk about season 3 and the possibility of this show possibly losing its audience. Could it possibly lose its audience? Who knows? Um, so let's talk about The Last of Us. Um, if you guys remember going into this season, I was terrified going into this season because I know exactly how The Last of Us Part 2 plays out. I know that Joel dies in The Last of Us Part 2. I know that he dies pretty early in The Last of Us Part 2. I know that The Last of Us Part 2 is basically Joel dies and then it's mostly just flashbacks of Joel and Ellie running around doing things because Joel's dead and it's more about Ellie getting revenge. Um and I was terrified about that. I was very terrified about this season possibly doing the same thing that the game did and some of the story decisions that I don't agree with the game. And for the most part, and I will say this, there are still those decisions, some of those decisions that the game made are still there and I don't necessarily agree with. Um like killing Joel as early as they did. Yeah, I wish they would have held off on that, but they didn't. Although I love the way they handled Joel's death in the show. They still they did in episode 2. Um there's still some decisions as far as like one of the things that bothered me about the game, and it actually bothered me again even more so in in the show. It was actually the way Dina found out about Ellie being infected. So in the game, um Ellie tells Dina that she's infected, right? And instead of Dina asking a whole bunch of questions like, wait, how's this possible? You would think that Dina's first instinct would be like, okay, how's this possible? How are you immune? Like, you would think that she'd be asking all these questions. Instead, she undermines that by announcing that she's pregnant, and then they just start making out and, all that kind of stuff. They still did that in the show. In the show, she Dina points the gun at Ellie for the longest time and Ellie's like, I'm immune. Don't shoot me. I'm immune. I'm immune. And then literally Dina says, I'm pregnant. And then they just start making out. And Dina doesn't even have a single question. Dina doesn't even ask a thing about Ellie being immune. It's like she just accepts it and it's move on. A lot of people have issues with Ellie going, I'm going to be a dad. Okay, whatever. I'm not even gonna acknowledge that. I'm not even gonna acknowledge that. some people think that's pushing an agenda. I'm not even gonna acknowledge that. Um, you know, we'll see. I'm just gonna not acknowledge it. Not even gonna acknowledge that argument. But, um, but it's decisions like that that bothered me in the game that once again bothered me in um in the show. Um and there's some other things too. Um some of the stuff with the WLF I kind of didn't really care about. There's some stuff with Jeff. Well, Jeffrey Wright has an amazing scene in this movie, in this show, where he's interrogating the Seraphites. That is incredible. I just wish he was in it more, and I feel like we're gonna get more of him in season 3 because the perspective is gonna shift in season 3. I do think we're gonna get more of him. Um, Everything with Jeffrey Wright I cared about. Some of the other WLF stuff and the Seraphite stuff, not so much. But other than those little complaints, I loved this season. I really loved this season. I think it's well. I thought I think it's a very well written show. Um, they didn't. Some of the aspects of the game, they actually improved on a lot of aspects. They actually made a lot of departures from the game, which I actually kind of liked. Um, like a perfect example is that after Joel dies, they actually have an entire episode that's about um actually kind of the aftermath of that deals with the aftermath of what happened. And you don't really get that in the game. It's more because in the game, it, and I think Neil Druckmann said it in one of the making of, I think it was maybe the making of that episode, where he said because it's a game, because of the gameplay aspect of a video game, you have to kind of just get immediately back into the gameplay. You don't have time to, you don't have, you don't, you can't do these like little moments, you can't have these moments of characters sitting around and not doing anything. You have to keep the gameplay going. And I like the fact that we got an episode that was about everyone dealing with the aftermath of number one, the attack on their town from the infected, but also Ellie being affected by watching Joel die. Like that was incredible. That was something that I really liked because we didn't get that in the game. And that bothered me a little bit about the game. That actually did bother me a lot because we didn't get a lot of moments where Ellie was actually reeling and really getting time to actually grieve about the death of Joel, about her loss, you know. Um and I like the fact that they gave us that. I like what they did with Jesse. I like that we got more backstory on Jesse. That we got a little bit more that Jesse's got more personality in this show than he did in the game. Because in the game he just comes off as kind of like like the kind of annoy. Like I'm not gonna lie, Jesse in the game is he's one of those characters where when he's introduced in the game, it's kind of like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here, bro? You know. But in the show, it's like they give him a lot of stuff to do, but they also give him a lot of character development. And there's a moment in the finale where they actually give him a lot of moments between him and Ellie where um he's there to actually call out Ellie on a lot of her selfishness because a lot of this stuff that Ellie's doing is not really for um the betterment of anybody else. It's for her. She's doing this because she was hurt, you know. Um she's doing this for her own um for her. She's going after Abby, and she's going after these people um for for her, you know. And Jesse calls her out on that, and I like that. I thought that was really cool, and I thought that was really interesting. Um, but by far my favorite episode of this season was episode 6. And I talked about that a little bit. Actually, I actually said it in my video when I talked about Andor. I did a quick little shout out to The Last of Us episode 6, and I said that episode 6 is my favorite episode, not just of this season, but it's my favorite episode of the series in general. Now I know a lot of people are like, "Well, you need every episode of the show to kind of get to earn this to earn episode 6 of season 2." But I still think from an emotional standpoint episode 6 just works. Number 1, because like I said, again, going back to them making a departure from the game that actually worked for me, getting to a backstory about seeing Joel talking to his dad, and understanding that Joel's dad was abusive, and that seeing Joel have that conversation with his dad, and his dad going, I'm hoping that when you have kids, when you have your own kids, that somehow you'll do better than me, you know. And then years later, when he's talking to Ellie on that porch, that he says that exact same thing his dad said to him, you know, like, one day if you should have one of your own, well, I hope that you do a little bit better than me, you know. That was just so great. It's little things like that that make this show just that make me feel like Craig Mazin understands how to write good television, how to write not just good television, how to write great stories, you know. One of the other things I loved about that episode was I loved, like I said, all the like the basically how we basically got this passage of time of it basically tells every single birthday of Ellie's from the point of where they ended up from the end of season 1 all the way up until when their relationship kind of broke off. And I loved seeing that the thing that did it was the death of Eugene. And I like the fact that they set up the death of Eugene in episode 1. And they set that up. And Catherine O'Hara's character, who, by the way, Catherine O'Hara was so great in this show, but they set that up for a reason. And I remember when she brought up, when she was bringing that up, I was like, why is she just bringing this up? Are we ever gonna see that? We saw it in this episode. We saw her. We saw what happened. Joel goes to uh um Joel goes to uh uh the woods. They find Joel and Ellie go into the woods. They find Eugene. Eugene has been bit. Joel wants to kill him right there on the spot, but he still has time, and Eugene wants to say goodbye um to I can't remember Catherine O'Hara's character's name, but his wife is Catherine O'Hara's character. Um, he wants to say goodbye, and Ellie's like, he still has time. Let's let him see his wife. Let's go. Let's. And then Joel's like, all right, we'll meet you halfway. I promise. And it's in that moment, Ellie looks at Joel and he's like, he's lying to me. I know he is, because that's the same look he gave me when I asked him if everything about the Fireflies was true. So Joel takes him out near a lake, and basically, um, it's basically the ending of oh, what's the John Malkovich movie? Based on the really popular book. I we watched the movie in high school. We watched the movie in high school. I can't remember. Um, of Mice and Men. That's what it was. Yeah, that's what it was. Of Mice and Men. Yeah, that's basically. um. Uh. Basically, you know. Uh. Uh. Joel basically pulls a of Mice and Men and shoots Eugene by the lake. Except Eugene doesn't want to, hug the rabbits. Um, but anyway, um, so Joel kills Eugene, and then they get back to the village. Catherine O'Hara eventually finds out, and then we get that moment where Ellie just looks at him and says, "You swore," and she's not talking about what happened with Eugene. The reason why she's saying "you swore," it's because of the Fireflies. And then we get the porch scene. Now, this scene on the porch, we get that scene happens at the very end of the game. And I'll talk about that later on. I'll talk a little bit about that later on, but that moment comes at the end of the game. Okay? By the way, yes, this is spoilers for obviously this is spoilers for the season, but I also should also warn you guys. I'm also going to get into spoilers of the actual game Last of Us Part 2. So if you haven't played the Last of Us Part 2 video game, um from this point up until the end of the video, you should definitely consider turning away. If you've been listening up until this point, sorry for spoiling most of season 2 for you, but basically from now up until the end of the video, I'm also going to be talking about some Last of Us Part 2, the video game spoilers. So if you haven't played Last of Us Part 2, the video game, this is your warning now. For those of you who watch the show but don't want potential spoilers for future episodes, now's your time to turn away. Um, but if you want to keep watching, then go ahead and keep watching. So this porch scene in the game happens at the very end of the game. It's literally the last flashback you get toward like right in the final moments of the game. It's the final cut scene basically. And it's a lot different in the game than it is in the show. Because in the game, first of all, Ellie finds out about the Fireflies in a different um location. I think she actually goes back to Salt Lake City. I think she actually goes to Salt Lake City and finds out about and Joel goes out. Joel goes out, finds her, forces Joel to tell the truth, and then she says, "I'll go back to Jackson, but we're done." And then that's where their kind of relationship kind of broke off. But they took that porch scene from the end of the game and decided to take the moment where Ellie officially finds out and take that moment and implement it into the porch scene. And again, I talk about an amazing departure from the game because this worked so well. Just because, look, it plays out exactly the way it plays out in the game. What are you drinking? Coffee. Where'd you get that? Those people that came into town last week. A little embarrassed, but would have had to trade to get it, but it's not bad. Which by the way, I was complete side topic. I thought about this when the game came out by the way, I never played the game. I just watched the cutscenes on YouTube. But I thought about this when the game came out, and then I thought about and then when I saw it on the show, I still wonder what Joel traded to get that coffee. Like I still want to know what Joel traded to get that coffee. I hope Neil Druckmann will someday answer that question. What did Joel trade to get that coffee? Anyway, that doesn't matter. But then, and then it's like, oh, Dina, is she your girlfriend now? No, I don't know why she did that. I don't know what her intentions are, but I know she'd be lucky to have you. And then there's a departure here, because then Ellie's like, tell me what happened with the Fireflies. If you lie to me again, we're done. And then she's like, were there raiders? Could they have made a cure? Did you and Marlene? And the look that Pedro Pascal gives, as he's not even saying yes or no. He's just nodding his head. I wanted to cry. Like, that man made me want to cry. And then I did cry. I did get emotional watching it. And then he says, making a cure would have killed you. And oh wow, I'm messing with the mic right now. He's like, making a cure would have killed you. And Ellie's like, I was supposed to die. That was my purpose, but you took that from me. You took it from everybody. And then Joel looks at her and goes, yeah, and I'll pay the price for it, because you're going to turn from me. Because you're going to turn away from me. And then he says, but if somehow the Lord gave me another chance at that moment, I would do it all over again. And then Ellie looks at him and goes, 'cause you're selfish. And then he says the line, and it broke my heart, and it made me cry. He says, because I love you in a way that you couldn't understand. I'm like, and I'm watching this, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're making me cry. The Mandalorian is making me cry. Reed Richards is making me cry. It is so heartbreaking. And he's like, and he says, but one day, if you should be lucky enough to have one of your own, well, I hope you do a lot better than me. Oh my gosh. And then Ellie looks out, and she says, I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this. Cuts back to Joel, and Joel's just crying, and then Ellie, but I would like to try. That was the last conversation they had. And then the next day, he gets beaten to death in front of Ellie. That moment is so heartbreaking in the game, the way it plays out in the game. Now, I will say this, at the end of the game, that it does continue a little bit, because um Joel starts crying and he says, I'd like that. And then um and then Ellie walks away. Um but they didn't do that here. Which I'm wondering if they're ever gonna if maybe they're gonna do another flashback, maybe because Craig Mazin says they might do a season 4 because there's so much story in The Last of Us Part 2 that they might have to stretch it to season 4. There's a possibility that they could do more Joel flashbacks in maybe a season 4. But 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 yeah, episode 6 was just fantastic. And then we get to episode 7. Um and then episode 7 is basically where Ellie finds Owen and Mel. Oh, that scene in episode 7 where like I said, Jesse calls Ellie out on her selfishness, but then Ellie goes, "You know what?" Ellie's like, "F the community." She's like, he goes, my community was beaten to death while I was forced to watch. I was like, and I was watching that, and after watching episode 6, that line was just like, I was like, those are the words of somebody who has had enough, you know. And then she gets to Owen and Mel, and she shoots Owen, and then Mel gets struck in the neck. Now, I will say this, I do like the way this moment is handled in the game more so than I do in the show. Now, in the show, they try to do this thing where Mel is trying to tell Ellie how to cut the baby out of her. So, yes, much like in the game, when when Ellie kills Owen and Mel, she finds out that Mel is pregnant, and that really messes her up, and she starts basically having a panic attack afterwards, right? In the game, she stabs Mel in the neck, and then she goes over to Owen, and Owen is like, um she's, and then he dies, and then Ellie goes over to Mel, undoes her jacket, and sees that she's pregnant, and then that's when Ellie starts having her panic attack because she starts basically just like, what has she, because she's starting to understand, just she's starting to realize the monster that she's become. She's now starting to understand the monster that she's become. You know, in the show, although I understand why they tried to do the whole thing of Mel trying to show Abby sorry, Ellie, it's hard for me to distinguish because they're just so similar. Abby and Ellie are just so similar. Um they're just so similar as far as character wise in this show. They're so similar. But um when Mel was trying to show Ellie how to cut the baby out, um, I understand why they were trying to do that, but I feel like that just took away from like that same moment, that same level of, oh, that you got from the game. Like that moment of like when you saw in the game when Ellie undoes that jacket and she finds out that Mel's pregnant, you're sitting there and you're like, oh yeah, you know, And I feel like them trying to do this, although it is emotional, it doesn't really bring out the, because it's like, you know, because now it's, because it's now, again, it is emotional. It does have an emotional edge to it, but it doesn't have that same kind of like horrific impact um that it did in the game. Um but then we get to the end of episode 7. um Tommy and Ellie hear banging in the hear some ruckus going on. They run into the other room of the theater. All of a sudden, Tommy just gets shot right in the face. And then we finally see Abby, who we haven't seen since episode 2. But we finally see Abby, and she goes, um I let you live and you wasted it. No, no, no. And they cut to black. Then we cut over, and Abby's waking up, and she's walking over. And by the way, I love the way they kind of paid a little bit of homage to the game, where they kind of did uh this camera shot of like the camera's behind Abby and we're following her. It's almost like the kind of shot you would get as if you're playing the game. That was a nice little nod. It was a nice, I don't know if that was intentional, but it was a nice little nod to the video game. But anyway, and then Abby comes out, and and they're in the stadium where you see the entire WLF base. And you see just how massive their organization is. And all of a sudden you see on the screen the title card, Seattle Day 1. And now we're going to get the whole story through Abby's perspective, just like we do in the game. Now, here's where this is going to get a little interesting. This was one of my other big issues with the game. Now, in the game, like I said, in the halfway point of the game, you are on your revenge quest to kill Abby. As Ellie, you are on your revenge quest to kill Abby. All of a sudden, right around the halfway point, you are forced to play as Abby, and get invested to her as a character. Now, in a video game, now in the game, it obviously made a lot of people very upset, and even as somebody who didn't play the game, who just watched it as the cutscenes, it made me upset too, because it's like, why all of a sudden I'm forced to care about a character who literally killed one of my favorite characters? Why am I all of a sudden supposed to care? You know? Um. Well, now, and based on Catherine O'Hara's comments recently, season 3 is going to be about Abby. It's going to be her story. So now we are now going to watch all of season 3 through her perspective. You know, Ellie will probably appear in a couple of episodes, but it will mostly be about Abby. It's mostly going to center around her, which I will watch because I love the show and I am all for, and I love Caitlin Dever as the character, and I think she, in the limited time that she was in this season, she did a fantastic, even in this episode, when she's performing in this episode, Like, holy, holy crap. Like, I was watching this going, whoa, you are like, Caitlin Dever's amazing in the show. She's absolutely amazing in the show. And I have no doubt that she's gonna be amazing in the next season. I just don't know if I'm into the fact that we're going to if we're going to be forced to sit through, that we're going to be forced to sit through Abby's story for an entire season of television. And also, is the show going to lose its audience? Because now you're going to do an entire season of television without your main star. Without your main star. Like, Caitlin Dever's a great actress, but she's not the main star of The Last of Us. She's not the main star. Bella Ramsey is. And Pedro Pascal was the main star of the show. It is Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal are the two leads of this show. You already took away Pedro Pascal, but Bella Ramsey is the star of this show, and now you're going to, for an entire season, you're going to remove Bella Ramsey and bring in Caitlin Dever. And again, I have no doubt Caitlin Dever's a fantastic actress, and she's going to do a great job playing this character. But is it going to possibly drive away a lot of its audience for that reason? Now, and I'll be honest, I think it might. I think a lot of the people who don't know the game, who are just watching the show, are going to drive away from the show because, wait, where's Ellie? Where's Ellie been this whole season? Why am I only following this character? This character who in the last season killed Joel, you know? I have a feeling that might happen. I could be totally wrong. For all I know, maybe Abby is the reason why The Last of Us starts, boom, the ratings go up on The Last of Us. I don't know. Maybe that happens. But I'm just saying, I have a feeling that this could be a reason why this show will most likely lose its audience. So yeah. But let's see. But that being said, because I love this season and I loved season 1, I am very excited to see season 3. Even though I'm a little hesitant about following an entire season of television without Ellie. I am still very excited because Craig Mazin has not disappointed me. And look, I give all the credit to Craig Mazin, but he's not the only reason why. He's not the main guy in charge of the show. He is co-running it with Neil Druckmann, who also created the game. But Craig Mazin really is the architect of the show. You know, Neil Druckmann created the game and came up with the story, and without Neil Druckmann, this show doesn't. Craig Mazin doesn't have a show to make. But Craig Mazin crafted an incredible adaptation of an already incredible video game. And I think that this is amazing, and I cannot wait to see season 3. And I'm hoping that if Craig Mazin's interview comes to fruition, I hope we do get a season 4. Maybe season 4 is all the epilogue stuff, because that entire epilogue of the game, could be a season 4 if they really wanted to. That entire epilogue could be a season 4 all in itself. But yeah, that will but yeah, the those are my thoughts on The Last of Us season 2. Did you guys watch The Last of Us season 2? If you guys did, what did you think of The Last of Us season 2? Did you guys like it? Did you guys hate it? Um uh if you guys I'll say this. Here, let me just say this, okay? I'm just going to throw this out there, and I don't want to hear a single comment about it ever again. If you watched this show and decided not to watch it because and are now deciding to complain about it because you believe it's woke, or there's an agenda that this show is trying to push on people, um then don't even bother talking about it in the don't even bother commenting in the comment section. Don't don't even add to the conversation, because that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the actual show. Did you guys actually watch the show? What actual 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 critiques do you have on the show? What actual critiques do you have on the show? You know, um, and yeah, just leave all that garbage out of the comment section. I don't want that in my. I don't want that anywhere near my comment section. I really don't. That's not what my. That's not what my. That's not what my YouTube channel is about. I don't want that garbage anywhere near the comment section. Um, so yeah, I mean that's not what this is about. So let's talk about The Last of Us. Talk about the things we liked. Talk about the things we didn't like, and let's have a fun conversation about it. Let's not fight. Let's be civil. Let's have a fun conversation about The Last of Us. Do you guys and let me know. Do you guys think that people will come back to watch season 3 with the perspective changing? That's the question you got to ask. That's the question that needs to be answered. Will this will season 3 lose its audience with this new perspective change? Let me know what you guys think about all that. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like the video, please make sure you leave a thumbs up and subscribe. I think you guys should subscribe to the channel because Zeke the Geek said so. And I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.